Hey, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are listening. Welcome to On the Inside podcast. We are Sandbox, Sean, Emery, and Nico. If you're new here, do consider subscribing. We have our YouTube channel. We have our actually, it's not our YouTube channel. It's actually on my YouTube channel. We have our
Oh,
Facebook
no.
page. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Anchor. So wherever you prefer to listen to your podcasts, uh, please follow us. So we are on episode 9, and actually episode 9 means we've done 18 weeks of
Wow.
podcast already. Like wow, right? It's like
Yeah.
and in between season 1 and season 2, we never actually took a break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we did not.
So much for self-care.
Yes. Self-care right there.
Yeah, but in season 1, we were exploring the different emotions that people go through: joy, guilt, anger. In season 2, we spoke about something that's pretty interesting because we speak about relationships, we speak about the different phases that we go through. Initially, in the first episode of season 2, we spoke about the how to know whether this person is into me or not. Then we spoke about the last session was a special session, our Halloween session that was on being ghosted. And this week we're going to follow up on that bit. What if okay, you decided that no, I'm not going to ghost this person, or that person doesn't ghost me. There's that little bit left before you decide to commit. And then we go on to the big topic, which is the honeymoon phase, the phase from the point that you get together till the point whenever that honeymoon phase ends. Okay. So in the preparation for this particular episode, we discovered an article. And I think the article pretty much sums up the different phases before people get together. It's an article from, was it brights.com? Right. Let me just briefly mention the stages. So the first stage is the awkward stage, right? And the experts there say, oh, this is where it gets a little bit odd because you go on the first date. There is that excitement. There is, you wonder what's going to show up, what's going to show up, what kind of personality is going to show up. And one of the points that the author makes is that on the first date, people are overthinking things. They are putting themselves under a lot of pressure. And she suggests to go on the second or third date before you actually make a choice on whether to continue seeing this person. So I just want to get your thoughts first, and Emery first, right? So
Putting me in a hot seat. Mm-hmm.
yeah, if the first date is odd, would you go on the second or third date with the person just to see whether this is the real thing or this is just nerves?
Yeah, I definitely would. Yeah, because I'm curious generally, so I don't think it's fair to, just wipe someone off after a first date because, the other person could be anxious, right? And sometimes anxiety could cloud a lot of things.
Wow.
So yeah,
Very generous.
of course.
Nico, if the first date was really, really odd, would you still go on a second or third date with the person?
Probably not. No, probably not. I don't have a good explanation as to why. But no, because I mean, to me, it's like, sure, I mean, a first date can be awkward, like maybe in the first third of the first date, or like the beginning, of course, it's always a bit awkward, or like, but to me, if there's not moments that things kind of like open up a bit and, everyone kind of loosen up, and then it's kind of flows a bit more, the conversation, and it's less awkward, and then some kind of like enjoyment, maybe a bit of fun there. Then I would say if that happens, then okay, that's yeah, sure, why not? So means like okay, there's maybe we both kind of like a bit anxious, but there's something there, and then we still need to kind of relax a bit. Yeah, but if it's awkward throughout, and by the end of the date, I'm like, okay, no, this was just this was just torture, because
Yeah.
it can be sometimes. I would be no, probably not won't try again. Yeah.
Yeah, and because if I try to put myself in that position, and when I try to think, okay, so the first date was weird, um, I probably had a part to play in it as well, because maybe I'm not the best conversationalist, or but it's part of me says that if the first date was so difficult, why would I put myself through that entire experience again if it didn't work out?
Why
Yeah.
not? I mean, what if the second one is better?
What if it wasn't? What if it was the exact same thing as
I
as the
think-
first as the first
Yeah.
as the first date?
This is a glass half full, half empty situation, right?
Yeah. But see, the implication of that means there's a pressure on people to now impress on the first date, right? You have to come across as interesting. You have to come across as at least making the person want to see you again. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of pressure to put yourself under for the very first date. But that's the way things are, right? Not everyone is willing to put themselves through the second or third date, even if things were a little bit awkward. Emery's a really nice person, so
Yes.
That's why we are friends, Sean.
She's very forgiving. That's why.
very, very forgiving.
We're still here. That's why we're still.
All right.
Let me not count the times. Yeah.
So the next stage, as the author describes, is the attraction stage. And the attraction stage is where maybe you start to feel like, I don't know, like you feel, it's like a crush. It's like an infatuation, right? Like you're so excited around that person. When the person replies, you're like, oh, your heart beats a little bit faster. And this is the phase where the author suggests that there's a lot of marketing involved. So and he describes it this way, right? So, and this phase of marketing, you're trying to show the best of you. You want to show all your good qualities, and you also are looking for all the good qualities in the person that you are dating, or that dating, or you're going out with. And you want them to fall deeply and madly in love with you, right? So that's the phase where it's also a little bit of the phase like you start to test water a little bit. Does he like me, or does she like me, or does she not? And you try to basically come across as perfect a person as according to what the other person wants. Right, so that's the attraction stage, and exciting phase.
But see, isn't that the reason why we can't just write someone off after the first meeting? Because sometimes it might take a while to warm up to someone or be attracted to someone. Haven't you had the experience?
So, I mean, I have started to be interested in a person like quite some time after she liked me first, right? But I didn't feel anything for her. Then we spoke a little bit more. And then slowly I started to feel for her while she started to feel less for me. So, but that was over like a period of, well, many, many, many months, right? Yeah. So, I mean, as I shared just now, I feel it's just really unlikely that I would go on a second date with the person if I did not at least get some kind of feeling that there's something interesting or mysterious about the person that I want to find out a little bit more, then yes, I will go on a second date to explore. Yeah, and hopefully that if things go well, then that crush, that attraction naturally comes along. But yeah, it reminds me of one thing though. Sometimes when you go on dating apps, right, then there will be people who say in their description, they talk a bit about themselves and they say, I am slow to warm up, but once I feel comfortable with you, I can be very bubbly and chatty. Right. The first question that comes to my mind is, where is that time going to be? So then what am I supposed to do, right? Like you go into the app, you chat with the person. So if she doesn't reply, am I supposed to say that, okay, I'm going to push and push and push and push and push until she kind of replies? Or how do I know whether she's not interested or whether it's just her personality that she's slow? Right? Even if I was very attracted to her. Yeah, I just don't really know how to approach that.
Yeah,
It is hard, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think we have to. So I'm wondering why people sometimes present themselves that way. Sometimes it's a bit of a protective thing as well. It's like not to. Some people are just shy, and it's a way to say, okay, don't be put off by the fact that maybe I'm not opening up as much as you would expect, or yeah. So that's my sense. So it's kind of a way to kind of make things easier for themselves. I feel it's not really about you and about what you should be doing or not doing. It's not more about themselves. Kind of like get some of the pressure off,
Setting expectations low.
Yeah, exactly. So then when they don't feel they have to try so hard on the day, they don't have to be so uncomfortable, to put so much pressure on themselves, and they can be, they're like, okay, that person I've read that, I'm slow to open up, meaning, okay, I can go there and be a bit more relaxed. You get what I mean? So it's sometimes.
But you're going there to be a bit more relaxed because you're putting the pressure on the other person to keep engaging you, because you say that you are not a good conversationalist, right? In that sense. So it takes time for you to warm up. You're not going to share much until the point that you feel comfortable. So what exactly is going to make you feel comfortable then? So that you can get to the stage where you're willing to share.
Yeah. I mean, I think
so you can ask. You can ask, right, Sean? You can go, what's going to make you comfortable?
Never actually tried that.
Yeah, because that could be a good conversation starter.
Yeah. Or you could approach. I don't know how you would approach it, but maybe think about it as, I don't have to do things any different with that person. Yeah, and see what happens. Just as an experiment. I don't mean to say that's a solution and that. And it's still very hard to not feel that pressure, to like be very engaging and try extra hard. But maybe, experiment and see what happens when you just kind of take it easy, give space to the person and so on, without trying to feel like you have that responsibility or that pressure to like handle the whole date and kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think, of course, the worry is that if, as the person who's going out and trying to engage that other person, if you feel like, okay, if I feel like it is too difficult to have to keep on thinking about things to say, then the sense that I might be getting is maybe we are just not clicking.
That's fair.
And and I find it very difficult to judge, okay, where do I go next from here? Right? Yeah, she might be interesting, but we don't click. Am I going to try again? Yeah. Putting myself through the dinner. It's not even about the money. It's really about 2 hours or 3 hours of potentially excruciating pain trying to keep up a conversation. Yeah. In the hopes that, she would open up, right? As she says she would. Okay. Interesting. Okay. The next stage that the author of the article talks about is the uncertainty stage. And he says this, right? Before moving into more serious stages, ask your partner exactly what they want out of a relationship. What do they value? How they want to live their life? How they want the relationship to be in the future. All right? Because both parties have to choose to work at the relationship, and you choose to work at the relationship as an effect of the wonderful feelings you've experienced through the stages of love. Right? They call this the uncertainty stage. So why do you think he calls it uncertain? Any
Amerie.
idea?
Yeah, sure.
I've
So
talked a lot already.
this is the stage of many firsts. Is this right to say?
For example?
I mean, when we talk about this stage, are we looking at, you know, the first time, I don't know, you have experiences together that define you as a couple?
Perhaps. I think this is also probably the stage where you start to create memories, right? You hang out together at once. You start to experience what it's like to be with people in different kinds of events. So, I mean, if you're eating with a person, it's one thing. If you're catching a show with a person, it's another. If you're going to an exhibition with a person, it's another thing. If you are, you know, in some cases, if you travel with a person, that's another big thing, right? Because it's the dynamics of what happens. It's a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. But the author also says this, right? I mean, he says this is also the stage where the most challenges crop up as you start to view the relationship with a critical lens, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that uncertainty happens at every stage. Really, a relationship is about uncertainty, right? There's no certainty at any point, really, if you think about it, because we can't control how the other person thinks or responds.
But the uncertainty comes, it's more pronounced because it doesn't give you assurance. There are some stages where you feel more assured, and then there is less uncertainty or less perceived uncertainty.
That's right. I think it's the perception. I mean, the uncertainty is always there, right? It's how you respond to it that's different, or how you perceive it that's different. Yeah, but in this stage, because, you know, it's you're feeling really excited, and of course, you know, when you're so excited, I think there's also more opportunities to be disappointed because you still don't know the other person really well. You know, it's kind of like peeling an onion. You're still peeling the layers and trying to uncover what's going on. And if you go in with heaps of expectations, you're bound to also be disappointed quite a bit. You know, if the person doesn't match up with your expectations.
Yeah. I think that kind of makes sense, because I think at some stage when we are, I suppose we call this the dating stage, right? So like before you actually get together, perhaps it is at this stage where I start to share things that interest me, things that mean a lot to me, things that I indulge in, and so I try to open up my world to the other person and, you know, see what the other person thinks. And if we enjoy the same kinds of things, the same kind of music, the same kind of environments, the same kind of food, it's like, whoa, so exciting, it's so fun, correct? But if let's say I show a concert that I love to another person, and the other person goes off halfway, holy shit, right? So
Why? You
disappointed.
wasted your money?
Sorry, what?
Because you wasted your money.
No, so it's not even that, right? So there is this particular concert that I really, really love. So it's called Yanni. And this concert was played live in, I think, 1994 at the Acropolis in Greece, right? It's apparently the second best-selling music video of all time, behind Michael Jackson's Thriller. So I love this particular concert because it's a style of music that I associate with. I can totally indulge in, right? And then if I play the music, I'm like in a different world. And I took after my dad. So my dad watched it many, many times. And when I got a copy of it, I watched it many, many times as well. And I try to open up that side of my world to another person. Yeah. But that kind of music, some people like it, some people don't like it. Yeah. And it's one thing to sit through with me and says, okay, that's interesting, but I know it's not my kind of music. That's fine. You know, disappointing, but not the end of the world, right? If the person dozes off, oh my God. Yeah. And I think the same could be said if I were to indulge in some other person's world, right? She might want to show me something about her life that is important to her. right? I ever went to watch a Chinese orchestra performance. Like, I cannot appreciate Chinese orchestral music. I can appreciate the skill required to perform the instruments, right? Because that's a lot of effort. But the actual music itself, not easy for me. Yeah. And that's where you realize, okay, the first sign of differences after the initial phase that, we like the same things, it's so similar, we're so excited to be, yeah.
I mean, it's an important point you're making,
good.
because I think, it's not about similarities, right? At the end of the day, we are bound to have differences. But I guess it's how, we respond to the differences, right? I think even if the other person, say the girl you go out with might not have a similar preference, right? At the very least, it's the respect that, yeah, this is your thing and this means a lot to you is really important, right? The courtesy to sit through and respect that, as opposed to, oh, I'm completely checking out of this, I'm not even trying. I guess that's the message you get. That's that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I was thinking again of that, about that uncertainty. And to me, I feel there's really like two pieces to that. So the first one, in the sense that it also shows up because you know that you're kind of progressing in a relationship somehow, and there's come a time when you're going to have to make a choice whether you're going to be committing or not. Even though there hasn't been any discussions yet, it's kind of like you kind of have that sense that, okay, we're kind of getting there, and that conversation might be happening maybe in a month, 3 months. You don't really, timeline. There's no timeline and everything, but you kind of get the sense that, and I think intuitively you kind of start to look for different things. You can try to figure out like, so instead of just enjoying maybe what's going on, you kind of try to focus on, okay, what might be an issue if we were to go to commit or go for something that's more long-term, what is okay. So there's this new thing, this new uncertainty that come up just because there's different stakes. The stake changes as you go further into relationships. So there's that sense that, so it's a sense for me where you're going to have more of that uncertainty in that phase than in that phase earlier on, I feel. And the second piece, and that I think somehow related, is that there's also uncertainty as to how much you should show of yourself. Because you know that, especially I feel like if you sense that things are working relatively well, and I'm move towards like more a long-term relationship, you can know the expectation for you to show more of yourself. So Sean, you talked about that concert, that something that close to your heart because that's linked to your father, but we all have things like that we deeply care about. Maybe issue we might have in the past. Like there's a range of things for which we would feel like very vulnerable, and we cannot always uncertain about how much we should be sharing about those. Can we trust the person with those kind of conversation or not? And also that's uncertainty because is it also too much pressure on the person are we oversharing maybe, Is it too early maybe to open up that much? Is it sending the wrong signals? Will the person freak out? I think so there's all those kind of like a bit complicated territory in terms of like, how you evaluate the person on one hand and how you open up yourself. And I think I understand that kind of floating uncertain phase there.
Yeah. So there are two different kinds then of uncertainty in that sense, right? So first is things that you like and you are wondering if the other person has a similar interest, right? Because if you enjoy the same things, it's so much easier to move along, right? Same kinds of activities, etc. Okay. But the other part of it, which the author describes as the next stage, is the intimacy stage or the stage of vulnerability, which is now instead of sharing things that you like, you share things that could potentially be embarrassing, could potentially be very, very private. And I think a lot of people don't get to that stage. And therefore, the dating relationship kind of falls off, right? And let me share what I mean, because for me personally, if I cannot share some of my most vulnerable feelings or thoughts about certain issues, right, then it's just really, really hard to get together with someone knowing that in the future, should I be in a very, very low stage, I cannot open up my heart to this person. Yeah. And some things like, okay, just as a general incident, entrepreneurship is difficult, right? If anyone has ever been in entrepreneurship, we all know that it is darn difficult, right? But there is a certain glamour that is given to the concept of entrepreneurship. Oh, you're your own boss, that kind of thing. But there are plenty of struggles that go on behind. And when you have to show, there is a certain front or a certain branding that you have. You cannot, it's not as easy always to talk about the difficulties of entrepreneurship. Right? A lot of times you might shout out certain successes, but behind the scenes, you're literally crying at night because of the stress and the pressure. Right? To be able to share those kinds of difficulties, for me, I can't just share it with everybody because I don't feel comfortable. It's not that it's a big secret. It's just I don't feel comfortable sharing that depth of emotion. Yeah, and for me, I would say that that's a critical stage before deciding whether or not I am comfortable moving with somebody into the final stage, which is the actually getting together. Yeah. What do you think, Emery? So Nico shared his thoughts earlier on this particular stage. What do you think? The intimacy stage or the stage of vulnerability? Critical stage?
Of course. I mean, I think emotional intimacy is very important, right? In any close relationships, not just for romantic relationships. Yeah, I think it's this ability to trust that the person, has got your back, right? I mean, again, we go back to this idea of, a more secure sense of attachment, right? You want the relationship to be seen as a safe haven. So, this person could be someone you go to, right? If you need to have a cry, if you need to just talk about how bad things are, about your pain, or to share, the happy things, right? But you also want this person to be that you know base from which you explore, right? We call it, just safe haven and a secure base, right? So this person could be someone who encourages you to go out there, right? To do your thing, right? And this is the sense of intimacy. When we think about emotional intimacy, it's a sense of closeness, right? You're able to share these things and not feel judged. And I
Yeah.
think that like I said, in any close relationships, this is so crucial.
So that's how I feel about it, right? Because I want to know that I'm not going to be judged, right? And of course, not from day one, I'm not going to show something that's extremely vulnerable, or but it's in different stages, right? That you don't mind, you let go a little bit here and there, and see how things go. Do you think this comes as a result of my personal need, which is I see my long-term partner as someone that I'm able to share all these deepest, darkest secrets with, which also means that somebody who doesn't have this need will discount this part totally.
I think it's human, right? It's ingrained in us. I mean, as humans, we all have a need to connect, right? We all have a need to feel safe. Yeah. If you have a, chosen one or many ones, I mean, not just in your romantic relationship, but, in close friendships and family, right? It's a very fortunate thing to be able to share your hopes and dreams and failures, with people, because at the end of the day, we all have a desire to connect, right? And certainly, it is a choice, who we pick, how we do it. Yeah. And a lot of times people are afraid. I mean, just because we want connection doesn't mean that it comes easy, because there's also a lot of fear with it, right? Because if we choose to connect, if we choose to reveal a part of ourselves to someone, what if the person uses that against us? What if they judge us, right? What if I end up feeling more ashamed, right? Because with this idea of wanting to connect also comes with this possibility of being hurt. So it is about taking risks. Does that make
Yep.
sense? Yeah. Which is why relationships are so risky. And the uncertainty that we talked about, this is exactly the risk we're looking at.
Yeah. And this uncertainty could also be quite highly influenced by perhaps past experiences in other relationships where you're looking for a certain thing that did not work out in the past. And you're trying to make sure that, okay, this person at least ticks that critical box that was missing in the previous relationship.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's another aspect also of that uncertainty is that so you want to be able to have someone who really can listen to you and, with whom you feel like, you can really share intimate things like difficulties, struggles you might have. But at the same time, not everyone can receive everything from you. People have their own issue, and some things they have worked through or they haven't had to deal with would be easy for them to receive. Something they're struggling with themselves, they won't be so available to hear from you because that trigger very difficult things for them they haven't solved yet. So I think there's always moments where the person won't be able to receive things you want to share. And I think one aspect of that thing is that might be hurtful for you. Like you might feel not seen, not heard, not cared for if you maybe step further in a relationship. And I think one uncertainty here, one question is like, so what do you do with that? So you with that hurt, you feel like something didn't quite work out as you expected. Or maybe it can be something else. Maybe something the person did just triggered you, or he thought, oh, that wasn't okay. I think in that phase, there's a moment when you're like, you have two options. Option one is like, oh, this won't be working, right? There was too much of a hurt, and we stop here, and we're done. And that's fine decision to make. And another choice is to say, okay, that was maybe hurtful, that wasn't, or just simply that wasn't really what I expected. But I can see that's something that person is struggling with, and I'm ready to try to work to repair the relationship nonetheless. So there'll be a break in the relationship, and nonetheless, I want to stick with it, and I want to try to understand what happened, and talk to the person and try to repair so you can go on. So there are those two options there. So the first option is like, if there's an issue, we end it, and that's fine. But going with the second option, it's kind of the thing that happened in long-term relationship, meaning you're going to run into issues, there are going to be fights, there are going to be things like that. There's always breaks in relationships, and you're going to have to learn, if you're committed later down the road, you're going to have to learn how to repair. And I think it's the first uncertainty there, because you decide to repair, it's kind of like you're already seeing it as a possible long-term thing, And I would say even trying to repair and trying to discuss the issue or the hurt that you've felt or whatever suggests that maybe you're interested to go further and see whether, that would be a good person to, whether the person have the kind of ability to fix those issues when they come up, because that's something that you will need for a long-term relationship.
I think the other part of the first one you mentioned was that, okay, they decide that it's not going to work out, right? Because I don't feel good after I've shared it. I think the other part of when somebody is more vulnerable, so they share things that are, very deep within them. Sometimes it could be mental health issues or something like that. And it's at that stage also where the other person can decide that I don't want to handle this, or I don't want to deal with this. Yeah, it's not like, it affects me, but I just don't want to deal with a person who has a certain condition, physical, mental, something like that, right? And I don't want to work with that as time goes by. And that's the time when you decide maybe this person is not for me. Yeah.
That's fair, and I think that's a totally fair decision to make as well. But I think my experience has been that people who've dealt best, people who had some condition and who had some experience dealing with those, and handling those with friends, with people they dating, usually they know to bring those conversations very early on in dating process. That's been what I've noticed. Unless that's something that comes up, of course, later on. That's something. Unless that's something, not including something that's still fresh for them, right? Something that's still tender. But people who had long-standing issues, maybe they've been living with physical disability, or they would know to typically to share it very quickly with people, find ways to, in a way that's not graceful, it doesn't put too much pressure on the person, but they would know to do that. Again, assuming it's an issue they've been living with for a long time and then learn to manage, right?
Yeah, I imagine it can be difficult to do that as well, right? Because there are some people who think of it as, I want to see if this is going anywhere before I share something so private. Right? I want to get a sense that there is a chance that this might be moving on to the next stage. If there is no chance at all that it's moving on to the next stage, then why should I share something so private?
I think it goes back to, I think, a few sort of episodes ago we talked about deal breakers. Right? And I think early on we would want to be sussing out for potential deal breakers, right? And if there are no sort of alarming ones or potential ones that we could sense, right? Then there is this sense that, okay, it's safe to be a little bit more vulnerable, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think just from everything I mentioned earlier, I just want to make sure, I just want to be clear that it's not like a discrimination against anybody with any condition or something. It's just as a consequence of the person's existing experiences, whatever that might be. Yeah. And that might come across as uncomfortable to the other party, and the other party feels like, I don't really want to deal with this, or I cannot accept this personally. So it's just they're not compatible kind of thing rather than a discrimination. Yeah, I just want to clarify the spirit which I made that comment earlier. Okay, so that's the intimacy stage. And I think there's the other little, I won't say it's little, but I don't think we want to discuss it that much, which is the physical side of it. Because I was having a meal with a friend, and one of the things that we were very briefly talking about is we do know people who say that they will not get into a relationship with another person until they've had sexual intimacy, because that's an important thing to them as well. So that's the physical intimacy part of it. And I think it matters to some people, it doesn't matter to some people. People have just different views over it. Yeah, all right. So I think when we talk about the intimacy stage, there's the emotional intimacy, which we've discussed at length, and also the physical intimacy part, which matters to a different degree to different people. All right. Let's go on to the next stage, which is partnership or getting together. All right. Okay. Getting into a relationship now. At this stage, I think there are a few things that we have to consider, right? Like, is when you get together, it's saying that this is now exclusive between you and the other person, right? Which means that previously in the dating phase, it might be exclusive or it might not be exclusive. Okay, so I just want to touch on that point a little bit, right? So at the dating phase, before two people actually commit to each other, do you think it's okay to date multiple people? Or is it you stick to one person and try to follow through as much until you get to the point where, okay, you decide? What do you think? Nico, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, well, I don't think there are really rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see there's really rules. I mean, I think some probably both persons should be open about where they stand in terms of maybe their dating pattern. Might be useful to share that early on, possibly, so that people know where they stand. So they might be seeing other people or whatever, and maybe have a discussion around that. Obviously, I mean, not on the first date, maybe, but pretty quickly, I would say that would be fair. Other than that, I mean, I don't think it's not an area where there can be really prescriptions there, but that's my sense, right? Especially that early, when there's no. So the reason why I think there's no reason there would be strong, advices or really good way of doing things, is because there is no bond between the two people. It's just the beginning, and there's really no chance of really hurting the other person. because you're seeing other
Don't you
people.
think that hurt will come in when people have a mismatch of expectations already? Even if one person feels like, no, we are not together, you should not be hurt, but it still affects the other person, right?
Yeah, it will affect the other person, but I feel like early on, so I'm saying if it's communicated early on, there's no issue, right? Yeah, the other person might be hurt, I don't know. On a second date, someone tells you, oh, I'm seeing other people as well, and you don't really like that. Would you feel hurt? Like maybe disappointed, maybe, like you don't feel as special, or you feel like you don't like that competition thing. There might be many different things going, and that's all fair. But it won't. I don't feel it's going to be a deep hurt. That would kind of suck, but it won't be like a big deal, right? You can be, okay, never mind, second date, and move on to someone else if that really bothers you, right? I think it's, so again, I'm always talking really early stage, assuming you're open. Obviously, once they start having some kind of connections and you're building up like relationship there, yeah, it's a completely different kind of area, because you might really hurt the person just by not sharing what's going on with you romantically, I mean, some people, you could imagine some people being in dating patterns, maybe being at the end of a marriage, or just, at the tail end of a marriage. I mean, you could imagine anything that will be problematic if it isn't shared early on, and more problematic than just seeing several persons, assuming you're single. Yeah.
Thanks, Emery. What do you think? Should dating be exclusive?
I mean, personally, when it comes to people, it's very hard for me to multitask. So for me, it's not going to be possible to have like a few at once. Yeah, it's just too much for me. But at the end of the day, look, it is everyone's own choice. What they decide to do. I agree with Nicole. I think if it's communicated early on, right? I think that's fair, right? Because especially with the proliferation of dating apps, right? I think the assumption is that it's the person you're seeing could be seeing other people too, right? And the thing is that there's no sort of right or wrong, because it's not like you're locked into something. It's not like you already had the discussion to define what it's all about. The more important thing is to if this is really important to you, to ask and just be open about some of your concerns. If this is it's not your thing, right? And having the conversation about it.
Okay, thanks. We have a comment actually from Gabriel. Let me pull that comment up. And Gabriel says this, right? What a picture.
Very on brand, on topic.
The dating scene for those in their 30s and 40s are so much more restricted as compared to those in the 20s, partly because other factors come into play, with the most important one being searching for a life partner as compared to a temporary muse. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. So for me, I don't know what it's like to be dating in my 40s. I would say that dating in my 30s, less restricted. So it's more restricted, not so much because it is like I feel those, or there are more boundaries or something like that, but because it's the things that I look for are pretty different, right? As what Gabriel says. And when I hit 30, I kind of feel like, okay, it's not like playing around anymore. I've seen enough to know at least what I don't like, and you're just kind of a little bit more focused. Yeah. I think my past relationship, I got into it when I was 30, and I would say that at the start, I did not know whether that would be like a life partner kind of thing. This is something that I discovered as the months went by. And yeah, I mean, it gave me a pretty good feeling. It didn't work out, but it gave me a pretty good feeling. And that's the time when I kind of started to realize that, hey, settling down actually is a different thing. Yeah. So I'd just like to get your thoughts. Maybe Emery, you can go first. So what do you think, right? Different factors involved?
I mean, I think if we kind of think about it very in a very simple way, for girls, for instance, right? As we get older, right, the pool also gets smaller, right? In terms of, the kind of the guys we can go out with, right? And in a way that's kind of, a little bit more restricted. On the flip side, if you're a dude in your 30s and 40s, it might not feel as apparent, right? Because, you could cast a wider net in terms of age, right? Yeah, so I think, if we think about it in a very simplistic way, just by sheer numbers, in terms of age, uh, for girls, I mean, if we're thinking about, heterosexual relationship, it will definitely be a bit more limited.
Nico, what do you think?
I think, yeah, so just to go back to the idea, like, yeah, okay, so those factors that come into play, like, you're looking for having different goals, like just, going to into dating and looking for more long-term partner. That's really pretty clear that obviously they're going to make things more difficult, because you'll be looking at you're going to have much more criteria, in picking up like a long-term partner than, having like a short-term experience with someone. So that's definitely an aspect. But regardless of what you're looking for, I feel that as you age, you'll maybe also know yourself better. And you have a better understanding of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so because of that, you're able to, I would say, I don't want to say, maybe be more selective early on, meaning you won't need as much of a phase where you can, explore with the person and see what's going on. I think you're going to get a better sense early on about whether that works out. Whereas I think when you're younger, you cannot not really see that, or you might be more blinded by like just the sheer like physical attraction, and kind of like discover those things as you go along, and also learn by yourself, And being older, you kind of have those learnings with you and they kind of play out in how you approach that dating thing. So in a sense, yes, it's more restricted, because you would narrow the kind of choices you make, but at the same time, it's more efficient if you want to care about that, because you're going to make better choices.
Yeah.
So you
one of the things I found in my sorry, go Nico. You want to finish your thought?
So just simply you're less likely to be hurt, in the process.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I noticed in my 30s is it's easier for me to say no to something that I sense very early on. Yeah. And like some of my friends say, oh, no, why don't you give it a chance and see how things go? I'm like, I just don't want to deal with that. Yes, it's just easier to say no. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also you have that certainty, meaning like you would say no because you've had similar experiences and where certain signals will lead to. Your friends might not have had those experiences and are not able to read those signs the same way, or maybe those signs don't matter for them, but they do to you. I think there's that aspect as well, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Also, I'm wondering, as we get older, I mean, we also carry more past hurts, right? I mean, assuming that you've had previous relationships, right? And the older you get, the more past hurts you carry with you, right? And certainly, a lot of things would change for you in the dating game, right? You might be a lot more fearful. Hence, there might be a lot more restrictions you impose on yourself, not just, external restrictions, right? Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Gabe, for the comment. Gabe has another comment. We'll get to that soon. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the actual point when you get together with someone. Yeah. Or is there an actual point? Okay. Because I have been in relationships before where we've never had that clear get together kind of point, right? And I know that we don't have that stage, because when you ask, oh well, when did we actually get together, and I look at her, she looks at me, no one really knows. You know.
Such a mystery.
It's the mystery of love.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then that's why, I mean, we also never had that. It wasn't a clear, what do you call it, monthsary or anniversary kind of thing, right? So, but I do remember there are also stages where I felt like I was not ready to get together with the person, but I was kind of pressured to get it. Yeah. And it was a situation like, me and the other person was studying together or something, and there was something going on. We were hanging out with each other, but it was very obvious that something was going on. But I haven't said anything about a relationship yet, because something didn't feel right. Right? I don't know what exactly it is, but something didn't feel right. And then we were sitting there one day. It was about 10 p.m. We were studying late, and she looked at me and she asked me, "Do you have something to tell me?" And I was like, "Shit!"
Oh, wow, that's intense.
oh no!
Oh my gosh. What do you say?
Yeah, I like you.
Aww.
Yeah,
So
and
sweet, Sean.
yeah, unfortunately, what followed up. Okay, we got together, right? But what followed on was a lot of misunderstandings and arguments here and there, because our expectations were very, very different, right? Like I, as the class rep for my batch, I would sit all over the lecture theater with whichever group of friends that I am. But then she was like, "Oh, why don't you sit with me during lectures?" All right. So we've never spoken about all these things, and I felt like there was something missing, but there was pressure to get together at that point. And maybe it's just me, right? I don't know how to say no. Yeah. So, oh, do you have something to tell me? No. Yeah. Have you guys ever been pressured to, in some way like this?
Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah, a few times I would say. It wasn't fun.
So,
Want to share a
pressure,
little bit?
asked, or were you asked?
Sorry, come again, Nico?
Were you asked to kind of clarify,
No,
where you were at?
I think there were a couple of occasions it was just an assumption. I didn't actually feel like I had a choice, or there was some sort of pressure to, like, some sense of urgency to get to a point in our undefined relationship, and you were almost forced to make very quick decisions. I mean, I can't go into too much detail, but certainly I could really recall a few times where I didn't feel like I had a sense of agency. I felt like I was compelled to go into something I hadn't thought about too much. Yeah. And it wasn't even sort of like me feeling like I had even some sort of real affection. Okay, no, that's not true. There was affection, and obviously I cared for the person, but I felt like I didn't have any choice. That was the position I was in. I could only say yes because I felt guilty. Yeah, I felt bad for letting someone down if I were to hurt their feelings, things like that. Yeah.
Can you imagine if it was a flash mob?
A flash mob?
Yeah. I mean, you never been through any of not that you never heard of any of those. Suddenly, a lot of people come up and dance, and then the guy goes through the middle and says, "Shall we be together?" And then you have like 50 people clapping. Say yes, say yes, say yes.
I didn't have that, but then when I was way younger.
Yeah.
I had someone who told me a story about a prince. I hope no one's tuning in. Okay. A story about a princess and a prince and stuff. And he literally knelt down, right, to go. Would you be my girlfriend at the end of the story?
Oh,
How could you say no to that?
Yeah, you
I
can.
was maybe like 19. Yeah.
yeah. Well, okay, because the story was so sweet, that's why you said yes, or like you didn't actually want it.
Well, I said, look, I don't know if I can give you what you really want. I mean, we were best friends, right? We were best friends, and it was hard because I didn't want to lose that friendship.
Yeah.
He meant a lot to me. And I knew that, it was just going to turn things a different way. Yeah, but at a point in time, I did say, I mean, I did kind of put it out there that I really don't know about this, right? And he went, oh, I'd rather have tried and failed than not to have tried at all. Yet I wasn't sure. And I went with it. But it was really hard because, yeah, it was just a nagging sort of feeling. And I felt at the time that, I was really more driven by guilt, or perhaps, feeling bad that, I might have to let someone down. And at 19, I think it was perhaps me trying to delay the sense of guilt as well, rather than say no sort of straight up. Yeah. Sean is sneezing. Would give him some time. Yeah. So yeah, that was quite a big thing for me at 19, I would say.
Yeah, it's quite heavy to carry at that age as well. I mean, so
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
No, but see, then you don't really know, right? Okay, how do you? Okay, so the question is this: how do you know that both people are really ready, and one is not feeling more pressured than the other? If assuming that it's very difficult to say, no, yeah.
Well, I mean,
okay. See, which is why some of my relationships, you know that things are going very well and both people are ready because you kind of ease into that we are together kind of scenario. Like you spend more time with each other, you feel like you are dependent on each other. And I mean, for me, like a critical point when I kind of realized in just based on experience that you are together is a time when you start to hold hands. Right, not arm grabbing, right? It's like really holding hands. Yeah, and that's where you start to realize that okay, this is something, and both people are ready. Because it's easier to reject a handhold than to tell a person no, we don't want to be together. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
I think it's hard. Yeah, I mean, my sense to go back to saying about when both people are not really synchronized there. I think there can be discussions around it. I mean, there's ways to talk about it. So an experience I had was like, I was told that, oh, my friends are asking, what's going on, between you two and so on. So there was kind of those hints that, okay, it was time to start to think about that and make a decision for myself. And I think, but generally, so there's ways that those things can be communicated without having the flash mob thing. Like,
I would freak out.
And it's true that, yeah. That's pretty intense. But some hints, now I could see how some people might need stronger hints that it's time to make a decision about what's going on. It's the famous saying by Jung, like the psychologist, was saying, life cannot give you hints. And if you can take a hint, life will hit you hard. I think that can also happen in relationships. Yeah. So sometimes your partner, they give you hints, and then if you miss the hints, you can get surprises. Because at some point, people might need to know where you're at and maybe move on. Yeah. So.
And some people are just very bad at catching hints, right?
Yeah. It's just sometimes you don't want to see them as well because you're great where you are, in a floating uncertainty thingy. It's the main reason why you might not see them. Again, it's just hard to make those kind of decisions. You might not be quite ready, and you might like the person, but you don't know whether the person will be willing to wait long enough for you to make that decision. There's a lot. It's not easy, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so right now, let's just assume that somehow you're together already, whether you suddenly hold hands or whether you both feel comfortable and it's right to be together. Then there comes this thing called the honeymoon phase, and let me just read out a quick definition based on one of the websites that we came across. So the honeymoon phase is an early part of a couple's relationship where everything seems carefree and happy. It usually lasts from 6 months to 2 years and can be marked with lots of laughs, intimacy, and fun dates. Okay. So the honeymoon stage, okay, firstly, do you believe that there is really a honeymoon stage, or do you think that this honeymoon stage is just a nah? What do you think, Amidst?
From a biological point of view, yeah, there definitely is.
I was going to geek out as well. Yeah.
What's that?
No, I was going to geek out as well on the neuroscience.
Okay, you can take over.
No, go for it. Go for it. I see that you want to. Yeah.
No, I mean the only thought I had is one of my couple therapy books is literally after the honeymoon, right? Because that's when stuff happens. Yeah. So I mean, if we kind of go with those lines, yeah, there is a phase where things are a lot lighter. When all your oxytocin, dopamine levels are still high, right? You can overlook some things, right? You can try to, close an eye, and because the high, definitely outweighs some of these other things. And it's only after, you're a bit calmer, and then you actually could go, okay, actually some of these things that were cute at the start are actually not so cute now. Yeah.
The honeymoon phase for me is I always remember it as a very happy phase. It's a phase where you feel like what could go wrong? Everything seems perfect. Like this is the person that I've tried to go for, and and she feels the same way. It's like so nice, so beautiful, and it's like I think a big part of it is also this need to feel wanted, and that need is validated at the point when the person says, yes, I agree to be together with you, or something like that, right? Through some verbal words or through an action, right? And yeah, so yeah, I always think that phase is very exciting. It's very, as the definition says, carefree.
But it's also the phase that you kind of lose a bit of your appetite and you sleep a bit less, right?
What? Why? Why
Yeah,
would you lose your appetite?
Because of what's the chemical? Vasopressin? Cortisol? Yeah. Anyway, it's.
I don't know.
But when you're excited, you lose sleep because you're too excited to sleep. Haven't you experienced that?
Too excited to sleep, yes. Losing appetite, no.
Suddenly you're less hungry because you're just excited. You're just a ball of excitement.
Oh no, I think of places where I want to go out and eat with her.
I mean, you would eat.
I like to eat.
Right? I mean, always eat well, okay, everyone? This is important. Okay, job hazard. But the thing is that sometimes when you're excited, you just don't eat as much, or because you're just consumed with thoughts, right? I mean, it can be pretty similar to, say, a drug addiction, right? It's addictive to get a text message or a phone call. We're in that phase. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think at the point when you decide to get together is also the time, possibly it is the time when things are at its peak, right? It seems perfect, like be it texting frequency and whatever things you feel like, you've kind of worked it out somehow, or you've understood a little bit of it based on the previous phases. And also I think it's fun because in the honeymoon phase, you are still continuously creating new experiences and new memories together. You're still going out, you're still showing different parts of your world to the other person. Yeah, very, very fun. Super duper fun. Like, you just can't wait to see the other person again, right?
Yeah. Also, I feel like it's a phase where your everything is kind of driven by your biochemistry. You know,
Yeah.
which means that
Why? Biochemistry.
yeah, it is.
That's the
Sorry,
truth.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It's non-romantic, but that's the truth.
So what I mean by that is that it's kind of like a double-edged sword in the sense that, yeah, everything is great and everything. And I think one aspect why it's so great is that things are great without you having to make much of an effort. Really. You really don't have to try very hard to feel good in that phase, you know. Even like lousy dates, once you have that bond, they're fun, you know. Things go wrong, it's fun, you know, it's adventure, you know, like you go to a restaurant, it's closed, or you forgot to, you know, make a reservation and then you cannot go in. Those kind of things, you know, it's great in
So
that phase.
forgiving.
Right. Not so great later on. Right. So
Not
that's what
cute
I mean.
anymore.
Yeah,
not cute anymore.
And I think, but what I mean is that, yeah, so you don't have to make as much effort, and that's what also kind of like the downside of it is like, I'm not sure how you, I don't know if there's a downside, but it's not the phase that prepare you the best for a long-term relationship, I feel, you know, because the lack of effort and there's many things can be like easily forgiven, as Amerie said, you know, like, you know, you can go past a number of things that you wouldn't otherwise. But that's what makes it great. Yeah. And I think one of the to go back to what I was saying about why also it's not like a great phase to learn how to be in a relationship is that you don't have that kind of work to do to repair when there's a break, when it's an issue. And unfortunately, that's really a skill you need to have later on in a relationship. Like, what can you, I don't want to say win back the person, but kind of like have a talk about what happened and any kind of difficulty.
Yeah. And because some people don't have this honeymoon phase, and some people have it, right? And I don't know if, you know, it's just, oh, you know, everyone's different kind of thing, or, you know, at early on, after they get together, very quickly they have their first quarrel, so they seem to have moved past that, you know, forgiving stage very, very quickly, and it's kind of like
I think it also depends on like how people got into a relationship and why. Like some people, for instance, who might be looking for a very stable long-term relationship, maybe to have kids, and they're gonna make their choices very differently. And for some people, like finding like a partner you want to have children with, you want to have a family with, like the kind of spark and the feeling it's irrelevant. You know, so they really won't go by that kind of like feel good thing. That's not how it's going to work. So therefore, there won't be that kind of chemistry thing going on. That kind of first peak, it would be built up over time, of course, because there would be a bond growing, but not around that kind of like heat of like, you know, that high and that's totally valid as well. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that they don't like that or they're not able to experience it, but it just means that maybe at some point they have made some choices and they maybe decide that, okay, that's not the best indicator of like, you know, signal about whether it's going to work or not. So it's not really the most reliable thing.
Yeah. Okay. And I think looking at the time, I want to move on just very quickly to the final phase of our conversation. And that's, I think I will use Gabriel's message as a base for that discussion. So what a picture again. Okay, so Gabe says this: the honeymoon stage is about being whimsical, hopeful, carefree, and trusting in love. When you are older and dating, the above doesn't apply anymore. People, Singaporeans, become more practical, cynical, and trusting more in bank accounts than love. And all in all, that honeymoon stage disappears as we get older. What do you think? Does that honeymoon stage disappear as we get older?
I don't know. I'm not that old, but I've heard stories of people falling in love in their 70s, and
Is
you'd be
it? Are you
surprised.
thinking? Are you thinking Jack Cornfield?
Well, yeah, he's one of the prominent meditation teacher who made his life partner when he was older. No, but
Yeah.
the story I was thinking about was more recent one, where it was really all about really that honeymoon phase. So it was essentially someone who was married and fell in love with a person who was their age, like in their 70s, and they just essentially both escaped. Took a car and went to that was happening in France, and went to the, I don't want to say too much because kind of okay, people I have some connection with, but drove up on the other side of France, spent a few days there, and eventually their the partner found out what was going on and called, and that just ended the stuff right there. But definitely was clear the fire was there. So yeah, it can be there. Now, do people, I was mentioning about being maybe more pragmatic, for people who want to start family and everything. Is this more likely to happen when you're older? Yeah, I think it's likely. And I think when you get older, it's easier for you to overcome those kind of urges and strong fire, that connection, that strong kind of infatuation, to make sure these are more maybe strategic, or you would say cynical, practical.
Yeah, I think as you get older, it's easier to get caught up in life and life stuff, and when that takes over, everything else just fades into the background, right? Yet there are also couples that can be, some argue they are in the honeymoon, not a phase, but they're in a honeymoon pretty much their entire relationship. And in fact, we know that for couples who do well, there has to be some sort of rose-tinted glasses they have on, right? They have to still be able to see their partners in a positive light, right, and forgive, right, for the transgressions. And certainly that's been documented, right? And not that we ignore the flaws, but like in the honeymoon stage, we want to give partners, the benefit of the doubt. We want to be able to still see their good, and still be able to see why we were attracted to them in the first place.
So it's kind of a sense, though. Yeah, so in the sense, so it's kind of honeymoon phase, but unlike the early honeymoon phase, that's one that's built on effort, actually, and maybe even skills to work through issues, knowing how to work with through issues, and kind of reconnect a bond, recreate a bond. Yeah,
that's right.
I do think if I compare myself dating at 30 versus 35, 36, I agree that I feel like I get into the practical stage much quicker as compared to when I was at 30. And the practical stage is where you get into certain kinds of routines much easier. You date at certain days, certain times, through certain activities. And maybe that's because I'm starting to see is this something for the long term? Can we? Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Right? It's not that there isn't a honeymoon phase. It's just that it's much shorter, and you move into the practicalities more, which is something like what Gabriel said. Right? Cynical, sometimes trusting more in bank accounts than love. I would say that's more practicality, because those are things. The way I see it, those are things that are required for me and a partner to settle together, or to live together for the long term, right? Money is not everything, or money is not the only part of happiness, but money is one part of it as well. So these are things that should be discussed. And I think, as I get older, or as I did at 35, 36, I feel it is not as difficult to get into these conversations earlier, rather than live through the 6 months to 2 years of honeymoon. Yeah, I've never been, by the way, I've never been in honeymoon stage for 2 years. I don't think so. Yeah. Thank you, Gabriel, for the comment. So I think we've come to the stage where we've discussed about what it's like, just at the stage before getting together, at the point of getting together, and just after getting together, which is the honeymoon phase. We have another part of the honeymoon phase, which I think we can discuss in the next episode, which is what happens when the honeymoon stage or the honeymoon phase starts to wear off. What are some things you notice? What are some things you go through? What are some thought processes and any interesting stories to share? Okay. So to all of you who are still with us, thank you so much for listening in. And we will see you 2 weeks later. And here's something interesting. This is the last episode that I'm conducting in Singapore. 2 weeks later, if all goes well, I'll be conducting my very first episode in Vietnam. Okay. And I'll be there for, I have no idea how long. Yeah, let's hope the connection holds up, because I don't know what it's like.
For 2 years, maybe. For 6 months to 2 years, hopefully.
You're gonna have your honeymoon phase as well there. It's part of the culture clash theory, actually. Like so we transition to a new country, there is such a thing as like first honeymoon phase and then reckoning phase and so on.
Yep.
Wow.
We should read about it.
Yeah, read about it. It's really useful to know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say because it is scary. Like Amidst and I were having a meal, and I was telling her it is actually scary for me to move overseas for work. For the very first time. It's not that I'm going to leave Singapore for good, right? Because I still have, some business interests in Singapore, and my work in Singapore still matters a lot to me. But to be able to move overseas is something that I'm trying to prepare for, and because I don't really know what to expect, right? So if anyone who's listening has any tips on on living abroad for the first time for work, just feel free to drop me a message. All right. Thank you everyone for joining in. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. We'll see you 2 weeks later. Right? Same time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye.